Hi everybody, my name is Kristen Nanez and I'm going to be going over Chapter 13, the cardiovascular system of blood vessels and circulation. Alright, so to dive right in, we're going to talk about the different types of blood vessels. So blood vessels are categorized into 5 main types. They're going to be arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, and veins. So blood circulates throughout the body, moving from the heart through tissues and back to the heart in blood vessels. Blood leaves the heart by way of the pulmonary trunk, which begins at the right ventricle, and the aorta, which begins at the left ventricle. Each of these vessels has a diameter of around 2.5 centimeters, and these vessels branch, forming the major arteries that carry blood to body organs. So each of these different types of blood vessels play a distinct role in transporting blood throughout the body, with arteries carrying blood away from the heart, branching into smaller arterioles, which then connect to capillaries where gas exchange occurs. And then finally collecting into venules that merge into larger veins to return blood back to the heart. The Pretty much the big difference between them lies primarily in their size, and their wall thickness, and also their blood pressure that they experience. With arteries having the thickest walls due to high pressure, while veins have thinner walls due to lower pressure. All right, in this slide, we'll just talk about the different types of these blood vessels. So the arteries, their main function is to carry oxygenated blood away from the heart to the body's tissues. They are normally thick and they have a muscular wall. Arterioles, they regulate blood flow by constricting to dilating to control blood pressure. They have thinner walls than arteries and they are smooth muscles. Capillaries, their main function is gas exchange will occur there, and carbon dioxide and oxygen between the blood and surrounding tissues. They're single layer endothelial cells and they allow for easy diffusion of substances. Venules, they are going to collect blood from capillaries and merge to form larger veins. And they are normally thin walls with less muscle than arteries have. And then lastly, we have veins, which they carry deoxygenated blood back to our heart. They have thin walls with larger lumens compared to the arteries. All right, next we will compare and contrast structural differences among arteries, capillaries, and veins. So arteries have thick muscular walls to withstand high blood pressure from the heart, and veins have thinner walls with valves to prevent backflow. Capillaries are going to be the smallest with single cell thick walls designed for efficient gas exchange between blood and tissues. So essentially, arteries carry blood away from the heart, capillaries facilitate nutrient and waste exchange, and veins return blood to the heart. Next, we will describe the general histology and function of each vessel type. So blood vessels, including arteries, veins, and capillaries, are composed of 3 distinct layers. These are going to be the tunica intima, the tunica media, and the tunica adventitia. So the tunica intima is a thin inner layer with a layer of endothelial cells exposed to the bloodstream. It has a direct internal elastic lamina separating it from the media. The tunica intima, it pretty much acts as a barrier between the blood and the vessel wall, and it also helps regulate blood flow and exchange of nutrients and gases between blood and surrounding tissues. The tunica media is a thick middle layer with abundant smooth muscle cells and elastic fibers. This is going to be responsible for vasoconstriction and vasodilation to regulate blood pressure. It is responsible for maintaining elasticity and withstanding high pressure. The tunica adventitia, it's the outer layer of connective tissue anchoring the vessel to surrounding structures, and it also contains the vasa vasorum, which are small arteries that supply nutrients and oxygen to the cells of our vessel wall. Okay, we will describe the function and valves in the veins. So their role and function, valves and veins ensure that blood flows in the correct direction toward our heart. So how do they work? The valves are flap-like structures that open when blood flows toward the heart and close when blood flows backwards. So why are valves in the veins important? So veins need valves to help blood flow back to the heart against gravity, especially like in our legs. So when they're damaged, if the valves are damaged or broken, blood can leak backward, which can lead to varicose veins. Varicose veins can cause pain, swelling, and other problems within our body. Next, we will be defining blood pressure, systolic, diastolic, and pulse pressure. So blood pressure is going to be the force of blood moving through our arteries. It is measured in millimeters of mercury. Systolic pressure is the maximum pressure in our arteries when our heart contracts and pumps blood. Diastolic pressure is the minimum pressure in our arteries when our heart relaxes between beats. And then pulse pressure is the difference between our systolic and diastolic blood pressure. So blood pressure, systolic, diastolic, and pulse pressure are all related to the force of blood moving through our body's arteries. Blood pressure is usually written as the systolic pressure over the diastolic pressure. An example of this statement would probably be, for an example, your blood pressure being 120 over 82. And a normal pulse pressure is about 40. So what can affect our blood pressure? Factors like stress, activity level, and fluid intake can affect our blood pressure. If our blood pressure is too high, it's very important to consider these factors when taking it. High systolic blood pressure is also linked to a higher risk of cardiovascular events like having heart attacks or strokes. Okay, in this next slide, we're going to kind of describe how blood pressure is measured. So it is measured by first someone wrapping an inflatable cuff around our upper arm. They then inflate the cuff until blood flow is temporarily blocked. Then they slowly release the pressure while listening to the artery with a stethoscope. Third, they will listen for the first sound heard, which indicates the systolic pressure, and the last sound heard is the diastolic pressure. They are both recorded as a single reading. For example, like 122 over 82. This is going to be done by using a pressure gauge attached to the cuff. This process is called osculation and uses a device called a sphygmometer, which is a blood pressure cuff. Okay, describe how blood pressure changes as it moves through the vasculature of the body. As the blood moves through the body's vasculature, blood pressure will normally decrease from the highest point in the large arteries to the lowest part of the vena cava. The most important drop occurs in the arterioles. This is because they are smaller in diameter and have high resistance to blood flow. So the highest pressure in arteries is going to be the aorta. The large artery leaving the heart experiences the highest blood pressure due to the forceful ejection of blood from the ventricle. And then pressure drop in arterioles is when blood enters the smaller arterioles. The pressure significantly drops as the vessels narrow, increasing resistance to blood flow. In this next slide, we will be defining the baroreceptor reflex. So this is going to be a sequence of actions that help the body maintain a normal blood pressure. This happens when there's a sudden change in our position. So how do these baroreceptors work? Baroreceptors are nerve cells in our blood vessel walls. They detect changes in blood pressure by sensing how much the walls can stretch. This information is then going to be sent to our brain where it helps keep blood pressure balanced. Describe vasomotor control and differential distribution of blood flow. So, vasomotor control, it is the neural regulation of blood vessel diameter. This is achieved by the nervous system signaling smooth muscle cells within the vessel walls to constrict or relax. It controls blood flow distribution to different organs and tissues based on our body's needs. This differential distribution ensures that organs can receive the right amount of blood supply, while other areas can receive less blood depending on the situation. For example, is like when we exercise, our muscles require more oxygenated blood. Outline major pathways in the pulmonary and systemic circulations. So, the pulmonary and systemic circulations are two circuits in the body's circulatory system that move blood throughout the body. So, first we'll talk about the pulmonary circulation. This is when it moves deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. It then picks up oxygen and returns the heart as oxygenated blood. So first, deoxygenated blood to the lungs. The right ventricle pumps deoxygenated blood throughout the pulmonary valve and into the pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery then splits into the right and left pulmonary arteries, which carry blood to each lung. Next is gas exchange. In the lungs, blood travels through capillary beds in the alveoli. This is where carbon dioxide is removed and oxygen is added. The last one is oxygenated blood to the heart. So this is when the oxygenated blood returns to the heart through the pulmonary veins and into the left atrium. Now, versus the systemic circulation, this moves oxygenated blood from the heart to the rest of our body, where it delivers oxygen and nutrients to cells and returns deoxygenated blood to our heart. So pretty much the first step is going to be the left ventricle pumps oxygenated blood into the aorta. This is the body's largest artery. Then blood will travel through arteries to the capillaries in the body's tissue, and deoxygenated blood returns to the heart through the veins and into the right atrium. And an analogy to remember those two pathways on the previous slide, as you can imagine, the pulmonary circulation kind of like a delivery truck that will only travel between your house, which is the heart, and the local gas station, which can be our lungs, to get gas, which is the oxygen. An analogy to remember the systemic circulation is like a delivery van that takes that gas from our house to all these different gas stations, which are our body tissues, throughout the city, dropping off the gas, which is the oxygen, and picking up waste products like carbon dioxide along the way. So in this next slide, we will talk about the following specific circulation, which is the coronary circulation. This circulation supplies the heart muscle known as the myocardium. It does this with oxygenated blood through the coronary arteries. Then deoxygenated blood is drained from the heart muscle through coronary veins, which returns the right atrium to the heart. The main function of the coronary circulation is to provide the heart muscle with the oxygen and nutrients needed for continuous contraction and blood pumping. A way to remember this one is kind of by its function. So you can think of how corona means crown. So imagine that heart being crowned with blood vessels that supply it directly. Okay, next we'll be talking about the circle of Willis. This is going to be located at the base of the brain. It is a network of interconnected arteries which provide a continuous blood supply to the brain by creating a circle of circulation. This ensures that even if one artery is blocked, blood can still reach the brain via alternative pathways. So a way to remember this circulation is that you want to think of it like the circle indicates a loop. So you want to picture a circular network of blood vessels in the brain, which you can connect that to being the circle of Willis. Okay, and then lastly, this last slide, we will talk about the hepatic portal system. This is the pathway that carries blood rich in nutrients absorbed from the digestive tract directly to the liver through the hepatic portal vein. This allows the liver to process and filter these nutrients before the blood returns to the systemic circulation. Now, a way to remember this one is so we know that hepatic refers to the liver. So this system is a network of veins that carry blood directly from the digestive tract to the liver. Alrighty, guys, that concludes my presentation for chapter 13. Thank you guys so much.